Thank you, Ashley. Good evening, everyone. This is the Benton Street Bikeway Study Community Meeting, number 1. I am Ralph Garcia, Senior Civil Engineer with the City of Santa Clara. We have Ashley Hare with Alta Planning and Design, who will walk through some presentation slides. So Ashley, I'll just turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Ralph. So next slide. So thank you everybody for joining us. We're really excited about this project, and this is our first community meeting for this project, which is just getting underway. As I mentioned, this meeting is being recorded and will later be posted on the project website. The URL for that project website is there in bold in the sub-bullets. If you're not available to stay for the whole time, you can reference that recording on the project website. We also have a duplicate of this meeting occurring on Saturday at 11 a.m. You can find that login information on the project website as well if you aren't able to stay for the entirety of this one, or if you have friends or neighbors who you'd like to notify that this is going on. We also have a project voicemail there at the 408-381-4240 phone number that you can call and leave voicemails that we are checking very regularly to get public comments on the project. We also have a project email. The link is there in bold again. It's bentonstudy@altago.com. And we also have a survey that will be available for you to provide some feedback. There's going to be several surveys during the course of the project, but this first one is available now on the project website. Again, that URL there up at the top, santaclaraca.gov/bikeped projects. And this is one of 4 projects that are ongoing that you'll see links for at that URL. So next slide. A brief agenda for our workshop tonight. Introductions and overview. We have the logistics for this Zoom meeting, as well as an interactive survey tool that we're going to be using called Mentimeter. You will, if you'd like to participate in that, you will need your smartphone. You can also leave us responses to the Mentimeter questions in the comment area in Zoom. We're going to talk a little about the project purpose, the study area as it exists today, the scope of work for this project in particular. We want to get some feedback from you on your vision and the vision for the future of the corridor. We have a question and answer session towards the end of the meeting, and then we'll talk about next steps. So next slide. So some quick introductions, folks who are key players in the execution of this project. Ralph Garcia, who you just met a moment ago, he's the project manager for the City of Santa Clara. Also Carol Shariat, Principal Transportation Planner with the City of Santa Clara, and Mike Liu, the Assistant Public Works Director for the city. Alta Planning and Design, we are the consultant that was hired to help the city with this project. Our key players are Jeff Knowles, myself, Ashley Hare, and Ben Frazier, who is our key planning lead for this project. So next slide. For those of you who have not used Zoom regularly, a few key features of the platform. The participants window will allow you to change your name if you need to. You may have come in as some acronym or a thing that doesn't represent your actual name. You can rename yourself using the participants tab under this, but you can click on that and change it. Next slide. The question and answer panel, you'll see there, I think this is only going to be active towards the end of or you can leave questions and answers now. I think the raise hand feature will be available towards the end of the meeting. So we can answer questions as the meeting goes on or towards the end as those questions accumulate. Next slide. And the raise hand feature, this is the one that's going to be available towards the end of the meeting when we get to the Q&A. So you can click on that and we will know to call on you and unmute you if you have a question. Next slide. Mentimeter, this is the interactive tool that I was mentioning. If you have your smartphone available, you can open your browser and type in the link there, the www.menti.com, and it's going to ask you for a meeting link. And it's that 8-digit code there that you see on the screen. So 61419359. So if you want to go ahead and pull that up now, we'll give you a few moments to do so that you have it ready and at hand when we get to the first of the Mentimeter interactive questions. And again, if you have problems logging into the Mentimeter platform in your browser, you can answer the questions in the Q&A and we will track that as well. So the first of our Mentimeter questions, again, you'll see that code there, the 8 digits up at the top. The first question in the poll is asking, where do you live? And the options, this is a multiple choice question. The options are on Benton Street, within a few blocks of Benton Street, another part of Santa Clara, a neighboring city, and then just somewhere else outside the area. So we'll give folks a few moments to answer that first of the poll questions on Mentimeter. Great, so far we've got 2 folks joining us who live on Benton Street and 3 folks who live within a few blocks of Benton Street. Okay, we will have a few more of these questions as we go through the presentation, so keep that handy. Next question, how did you hear about today's meeting? Was it through the postcard that was mailed out, the city's website, social media, or an email list, or some other means of communication? Looks like we got 2 folks who got the postcard and are joining from that, and 4 people who learned about it via social media or the email list. So that's great. Looks like everybody's getting the hang of Mentimeter. Oh, and 1 other. Excellent. Okay, so next slide. We want to talk a little bit about the study area as it exists today, and kind of set the scene and the context for what we are looking to evaluate during the course of the project. So next slide. The project limits are Benton Street from Dunford Way to Lincoln Street. You see here the sort of aqua colored line representing the project limits. Next slide. The roadway characteristics through the corridor between Dunford Way and Marianne Drive, that's about a mile and 8/10 east-west. There's no bike facilities currently. It varies from 4 to 5 lanes, and the posted speed limit is between 25 and 30 miles per hour. Between Marianne Drive and Lincoln Street, it's about 8/10 of a mile, also east-west predominantly, and no bike facilities currently existing. 2-lane roadway, the character of the roadway has changed and the posted speed limit is 25 miles an hour. Next slide. So why are we studying Benton Street? Well, first, it was included in the city's general plan and the county bicycle plans. It was included in the city's 2018 bike plan update as a priority project. We want to help implement the city's complete streets policy and help achieve the goals of the city's climate action plan. And broadly covering all of those goals, we want to make sure that we're enhancing safety and comfort for all users of the street. So next slide. So what is the process of this project and the plan that will be developed as part of it? We're in this first current phase now, information gathering and existing conditions analysis. And so you are part of that process here. We are looking to get input from the community on the vision for the corridor, locations that you have concerns about, things that should be taken into account in the analysis of the project. From there, we're going to develop and share some roadway concepts with you later. This will happen late summer, early fall. So be looking for some more community meetings at that time that will have some more developed roadway concepts to evaluate. From there, we'll be reviewing the technical analysis and revising the concepts based on the community input that we receive. And then lastly, we will move into City Council review and their consideration for how to move forward with the project. Next slide. So broadly speaking, the project goals are looking to install Class 2B. These are buffered bicycle lanes between Dunford and Marianne. These are the bike lanes that you'll see that have just the regular bike lane, but then another like hatched usually area that's adjacent to the bike lane that adds more separation between the vehicle lanes and the bicyclist in the bike lane. From Marianne to Lincoln, the project is looking to install Class 2 bike lanes, which are just basic striped bike lanes without that buffer that I was describing, or Class 3B bicycle boulevard. And a Class 3B, you will see the shared lane markings, but Class 3B bike boulevards also incorporate traffic calming elements. It may be speed humps or curb extensions. We'll be looking at all those options and getting feedback from you on what you'd like to see. But a key feature of that bike boulevard is those traffic calming elements. Overall, we want to, Overall, we want to make sure that we are improving safety for people who are biking in the corridor, closing gaps and expanding the city's bike network, and then improving safe routes to school for students, faculty, and staff who are accessing the high school. Next slide. So where are we in the project timeline? We began the project about 6 weeks ago. So we're here in this phase 1 community workshops. You are at the first of those, as I mentioned. We've had one meeting with the BPAC so far, and we are in the information gathering phase. So we've been collecting traffic data, doing site visits, doing walk audits, and evaluating the existing conditions in the corridor currently. From there, we'll be moving into more community workshops, some more meetings with the BPAC, developing roadway concepts to look at how we can fit these bikeways into the corridor. There may be some compromises there in terms of parking or the number of travel lanes or configurations at intersections. So we're going to be evaluating all of that. More community workshops into the spring. And then moving into City Council adoption next summer. And wrapping up at that point to see where the project goes from there. So next slide. So the plan process. Again, the goals are to improve the comfort and safety of all roadway users, regardless of the mode they're using. We'll be looking at traffic, parking, and collision analyses along the corridor, getting community input on all of these facets, taking the final recommended cross sections and other concepts to City Council for approval, and then based on City Council's decisions, looking at what the next steps are for the project. So here's our next Mentimeter question. Again, for anyone who's joining in the last few minutes, use your smartphone to go to the menti.com browser URL in your browser and enter that 8-digit code if you're asked. And so our poll question number 3 is, what are your goals for Benton Street? What would you like to see in this corridor? This is a short response, and you'll see responses pop up there in bubbles on the screen. So this could be things dealing with safety, could be dealing with crossings that you find difficult, could be other types of improvements, We're just looking for what would you like to see on Benton Street? If you're having trouble using the Mentimeter tool, also feel free to drop your responses into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and we can track them there as well. Okay, well,
I'm seeing that several answers are showing up at the back end, but for some reason they're not showing up on the slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through some of them.
okay,
So
great.
some of them include reduced traffic safety, true safety for all road users, safely ride up and down Benton around errands, dedicated bike lanes all the way to Sunnyvale, safety, east-west bike connected, improvement to access surrounding the STA bike, Santa Masquina bike path, better connections downtown and to Santa Clara Station, quieter bike lanes from Monroe to Dunford, make riding the bike ride more safe and crossings more efficient for cyclists, and safe for both driver and pedestrians, and enough parking for residents.
Okay, well, excellent. Thank you everyone for those responses. I'm sorry they're not showing up on the slide as we're looking at it. I'm also sorry for the frog in my throat. So our plan approach, as we go through this project, we're going to be looking at opportunities to incorporate complete streets approaches into the design and really guide the concepts that come out of this project. The bikeway improvements are aiming to promote safety first and foremost, encourage multiple modes of transportation. So helping folks find ways to maybe get out of their cars and walk or bike or use other ways of getting around. Encourage physical activity, again, giving people safer facilities and more options to bike around the community. Improve cleaner air. You know, every trip we can take by bike is one less car trip, and therefore some, fewer greenhouse gases and other types of pollutants. And also create a more connected bikeway network throughout the city and connecting areas. So next slide. So the recommendations that come out of this project will be based on public input and the traffic analyses. If bike facilities are recommended, we'll be looking at options that include removing a travel lane in each direction or removing on-street parking. We need to balance those competing demands. An example of what that could look like, you see some photos over here on the right of Prune Ridge before and after, where it went from 4 lanes with on-street parking to 3 lanes and bike lanes and on-street parking. So next slide. So as we get towards the end of the project and we've gotten our public input and we've done the analyses for traffic and parking needs and these various types of evaluations, we will be presenting to council that collected community input, the outcomes of the technical analyses, and the corridor improvement recommendations that meet the goals of the plan as I've described. And then from that point, City Council will decide if and how the plan moves forward. So next slide. So our project work plan, to sum up, again, we're in the information gathering phase now. We'll be moving into that with the data and community input into the corridor travel analysis, which includes vehicular movements, parking analysis, the movements throughout the network that this is part of. And from there, developing concept designs that look at some of the alternatives for the corridor. Based on those alternatives, we'll be looking at the impacts that those would have on the network and the street itself, and then developing recommendations for the plan and those pieces that we would be moving forward into council review. So next slide. So next we've got a few more Mentimeter questions. So hopefully you've still got that handy. We're going to walk through, I think there's about 6 of these, and we really want to get your feedback. So I hope the screen presentation will show as we're getting feedback, but if not, Ben can read those out again. So this first question, pulling up question number 4 here, is a ranking question. And so of these 5 elements, we'd like you to rank what Benton Street's priorities should be. So from most to least important, the options showing here in no particular order are safety and traffic calming, walking, bicycling, parking, and traffic congestion. So use the Mentimeter app to rank these in order of most important to least important. So we're getting some feedback there. Give it another few moments. All right. So coming in first place here, we've got safety and traffic calming. Looks like the next highest ranked option or priority is bicycling, followed, oh, wait, it's changing as we go. Okay. I'm going to assume that's stabilized for now. Oh, uh-oh.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'm gonna drag my other screen over. Give me 1 second.
Okay, so this is the Mentimeter input. So again, we're showing safety and traffic calming in first place, followed by bicycling, then walking, traffic congestion, and parking as the lowest priority of the 5 options there. All right, great. So next question, do you currently bike on Benton Street? So the options here are, yes, I bike on Benton Street. I do so in the roadway, like on the street. Yes, I bike on Benton Street on the sidewalk. Sometimes I bike on Benton Street. This could be on the road or on the sidewalk. And then, no, I don't bike on Benton Street. That sometimes category, we know that some folks are more comfortable riding on Benton on the weekends and less so during the week or vice versa. Okay, so we've got 7 folks who currently bike on Benton Street in the roadway. No one's reporting biking on the sidewalk. We have 1 sometimes and 1 person who does not. So, okay, great. Next slide. This is another short response. And so please type in, we'd like to hear about your experiences traveling on Benton Street, whether that's walking, biking, rolling on skates or on scooters or in a wheelchair, or driving. And you do have the ability to put in multiple responses on this type of question. All right, so we're getting some answers here. Walking and biking on Benton is loud and scary. Too fast car traffic. It's best during summer or on weekends when school's not in session. I ride only to the east of the San Tomas Expressway because it becomes very dangerous west of that. The sun gets in my eyes. Constantly stressed when driving. It's a busy street. Benton is usually quite calm when I ride there. I only bike on Benton if I have to. Drivers travel at unsafe speeds in excess of 30 miles an hour. Okay. I think there were a few more, but those will be recorded. I just don't think we can see them on the screen right now. Oh, driving on Benton, many crosswalks don't have traffic lights, which is dangerous. Okay. Only on Monroe and Santa Clara Station where there's a path. Okay, great. Biking does not feel safe. With 2 travel lanes, it is unsafe for pedestrians crossing even with a crosswalk. Been yelled at by drivers when riding your bike. And biking past Santa Clara High School is not safe. Okay. Great. It's all good feedback. So our next question, number 7, which destinations do you currently access along or via Benton Street? And so this could be anything from specific businesses or your house or the high school, the trail. Feel free to be as specific or general as you like. Okay, we've got a lot of folks accessing home, which makes sense. Library, school, farmer's market, and the police station, restaurants and parks, Santa Clara Station. Post office, SCU, City Hall, Target, and the trails. Businesses near Kelly and Benton, especially the post office, Central Park, and the high school. Okay, great. And these types of answers are going to definitely inform what we're looking at in the evaluation of the project itself. So thank you for all of that. Our next question, number 8, this is another short response. So which intersections are difficult to cross? We've got a vote for San Tomas and Kelly. Oh, Keeley. Kylie. Some more votes for San Tomas, a couple of votes for Lawrence, another vote for San Tomas, all of them. San Tomas, Sonoma Place to get to Central Park, another vote for Lawrence. Los Padres, Curtis. Okay, excellent. Okay, our next question, poll question number 9, another short response. What is your vision for bicycle facilities on Benton? We have a vote for protected bike lanes, buffered class 2 all the way, safe bicycle route, bollards or barriers, From Dunford to Monroe, at least class 2, we deserve our space. Bike lanes alongside the whole road and underpass for San Tomas. Dedicated bike lanes. All right, great. Thank you for all that. And then our last of the poll questions, this is another short response. What bicycle facility qualities would encourage you to bike or bike more frequently? Dedicated bike lane at a minimum, enforcement of safe driver travel speeds. Protected and or buffered bike lanes along the entire length of Benton. Something that resulted in slower car traffic. No need for me, I've been riding almost 50 years. Bicycle awareness features to have the drivers notice and be aware of cyclists. Permanent barriers, no need to enforce. Okay, great. Well, thank you again for your responses in the poll. This is super helpful for us in collecting public input. So from here, we're going to move into the Q&A session. A few just notes of how we're going to go about doing this here. You can raise your hand using the Zoom feature at the bottom of the screen. You can use the Q&A box on Zoom, and you can also submit a question using Mentimeter since you've already got it up and running on your phone. So as those questions come in on Mentimeter, they'll hopefully populate over there where it currently says no questions from the audience, but we have a number of ways to ask questions. So with that said, feel free to raise your hand or drop your question into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window.
We have
Sure.
2 from the Q&A box. If you want to start out with those, Ashley, I can read
Okay,
those
we'll
off.
do that. And then we'll go to Ryan. Ben, do you want to read off the ones in the Q&A?
Sure. So this one came in a little bit earlier when you were talking about traffic calming. What are some of the potential traffic calming options that we're looking at on the corridor?
Great question. So we know that there are some concerns already with key locations along the corridor. We're going to be looking at those more closely. Some of the elements that we may be seeing, as I mentioned, could be say, curb extensions. Those have a way of visually pinching down the road to encourage drivers to slow down. We may be looking at speed humps in certain locations. Other types of treatments like narrowing lanes can encourage slower driver speeds. Ralph, I don't know if there are others that the city has an eye on as well.
No, I think you covered it. I think one thing to note is for speed humps, we need to coordinate with our fire department to make sure we're not putting them in any of the typical routes that they use. And for different type of treatments, maybe even striping could be narrowing the lanes, signage, you know, things like that. Crosswalks, additions of crosswalks, whether needed or applicable.
Okay. Ben, what was the next question in the Q&A? You're on mute.
Another one we have we done any research or survey or any type of like background into how many people we think will use the new bikeway if it does get built? Or like how do we know people will start using it if it gets built?
Well, the area, there are travel demand models that I believe would generate that type of data. We also, as part of our public engagement process that you're in here in our first of our public workshops, we'll be gauging that interest. I know there's a lot of interest from BPAC in facilitating safer and smoother bike movements through this corridor. So I don't know that there are exact numbers on what the change in mode shift might be, but there is substantial interest in encouraging bikeway mobility throughout the city and on this corridor in particular. And so this is a first step in encouraging that.
And then one quick follow-up, and then we can go to Ryan. For the traffic calming, are there any possibilities of roundabouts? Is that included in what we're looking at in part of the study?
I don't know that it's off the table, but most of the intersections we're dealing with are currently signalized, and roundabouts would be pretty significant shift. I don't know if Ralph or Mike, you've got thoughts about how that might integrate.
Yeah, I think you're right. The roundabout is more of a facility for use at intersections to handle traffic. I wouldn't necessarily call them a traffic calming device in of itself, just as much as you would call a traffic signal a traffic calming device. When it's
Yeah.
needed, we can put them in, but I don't think in particular we're looking at putting roundabouts in for this study. So we're trying to implement the bicycle lanes the best way we can. And so something a major change like adding roundabouts might I guess sidetrack the project to something more than what we're looking to do at this point.
Yeah, and two more thoughts that I'd add to that is that roundabouts are typically implemented in order to reduce vehicle-to-vehicle collisions at intersections, because the angle of collision tends to be lower and at lower speeds. It's not really the goal of this project. And moreover, roundabouts tend to be pretty dangerous for bicyclists unless you have a way to get bicyclists out of the road and around the perimeter of the roundabout. So that might be at odds with the overall safety goals of this project as it's been foreseen. So, but like I said, we will be looking at it more closely as we go. All right, so Ryan.
Yeah.
You're unmuted, I think.
Okay, so I live very close to the Benton and the Lawrence, and there's something I noticed during the like weekend and also the night in the weekday, and the parking is very like a lot of cars just park along the Benton Street because there's a park there. A lot of people come here for the park. So from these slides, I didn't see any slides address this issue. So that's something I'm really interested, because right now we have some parking on the Benton Street, but for the weekend, there's still a lot of cars parking in the community. So if you remove like parkings on the Benton Street, that could be a horrible situation for the nearby community. And
yeah, thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, another thing is what I noticed for the car speed from the Lawrence is very fast, especially the left hand, just the left hand and the right hand, no matter it is, but it's very fast from merge from the Lawrence to the Benton. So I'm not sure whether it's like kind of concerns or not. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for both of those comments. As far as the parking goes, we are collecting parking occupancy data along the entire corridor and on the side streets. for both, a variety of periods during a weekday and also on a Saturday. So we will have that data to look at, and I'm sure that trend that you're pointing out will be obvious when we look at that parking data. So these are all things that, if parking is highly utilized, that is likely something we don't want to compromise in the course of the design. So we will be looking very closely at all of that for the entire corridor. And so I suspect that those kinds of trends, like you're pointing out, will pop into the forefront. As far as the turning speeds at the intersections, we are not making changes as part of this project on Lawrence or recommending changes to Lawrence. That's outside the jurisdiction of the city. And so those turning speeds off of Lawrence onto the Benton corridor, that's obviously something we want to take into consideration. And there are some treatments we could use in terms of traffic calming to sort of mentally shift drivers' disposition as they come off of Lawrence onto the street that's more of a community street, neighborhood street, and communicate that they should be changing their driving behavior and reducing their speed. So we'll be looking at that. We'll be doing some traffic modeling. We've collected turning movement counts and speed data for the entire corridor, and that will all come out as part of that modeling process. So thanks for pointing those out. Those are great points. Okay, we also have, go ahead, Ben.
We got a couple more in the chat unless you want to go to Betsy.
Okay, we'll do the chat and then we'll come to Betsy.
Okay, so one more from the Q&A. Is consideration going to be given to the design of intersection safety?
The design of intersection safety? That
Or like crossing through intersections and that type of thing?
Yes, so we will be looking not only at the cross section of Benton and what we can achieve there, but as I was just describing, we will be building these traffic models for the entire corridor and the arterial streets north and south of the corridor. And as part of that process, we'll be looking at intersection safety for the crossings, as well as how the concepts that we're developing for Benton interface with the intersections as they approach those intersections, cross through them, and then exit on the opposite side. So yes, we will be looking at intersection safety, definitely.
And then one more from the Q&A. Will class 2 bike lanes be one of the options for the entire length of the corridor?
So the section from Marianne to Lincoln is narrower, and that area is, it's less likely that class 2 bike lanes will fit in that section. And so that's the area that's being eyed more for the bike boulevard treatments that will include the traffic calming and the shared lane markings. We want to do what we can when we are asking drivers and bicyclists to share space on the road, that we are reducing that speed differential between the vehicles and the cyclist. And so we want to get vehicle speeds, as reduced as we can. And so we certainly will be taking a look at whether class 2s can fit in that section, but it's already been evaluated to some extent before this project began, and it's more likely that that section will need to be the class 3B bike boulevard. Okay, we have a question from Betsy.
I can read this one myself.
Okay.
So this corridor crosses both expressways, as an earlier speaker was mentioning. The county is actually in the process of making an active transportation plan, and I would really, really love it if we could do any coordination with them about these intersections. If you look at the place where Homestead Road crosses San Tomas Expressway, just west of the expressway, let's just say you can really tell where the county's part of that bike lane stops and the city's part starts. It's just, they're not in line with each other. There's no transition at all. So that was the thing that was in the Q&A here. Is to please coordinate with the county's active transportation plan. I sent to the email address for this project a couple of recent comments about what I think is probably the same park that everybody else has been talking about, which is Earl Carmichael Park. The comments were about trying to cross the street from there. There's not really a crosswalk. There's not really a good place to cross. And I think it's exacerbated by the fact that people drive that stretch like it's a freeway because it's a big wide road with 4 or 5 lanes. And also, I think we might need to do some work around, if there ever will be a crosswalk there or any other facility, or if people are crossing just, kind of on their own. I think we might need to do some work around daylighting that spot so that nobody's popping out from behind parked cars. East of Marianne, I see that being sort of continuing to be a shared space. Astoundingly enough, for as narrow as that is just a speedway. Crossing the street there on foot is challenging, and people speed, and I don't know how to slow down traffic, but if we're going to make the whole corridor a high quality corridor, that part needs to actually get slower, and that's not put up 2 more signs. It's something more physical and more visible than a couple more signs for the existing speed limit. And that's what I've got for right now. I'll email you the rest.
Okay, great. Thank you for all of that. We've got a question in the Mentimeter window. Where will we find concrete plans once they are available? So the planning document will be available, I assume, from the city's project website. Once we get to that point, that's still, 16 months away. But in the meantime, you can check the city's website, that URL. I think we have it up again towards the end of the presentation for project updates, the presentation materials as we're moving through the course of the project. So that will all be available for you to review and put your eyes on and give us feedback as we go through the course of the project. And there, Ben just dropped that URL for the project website into the chat. So again, that all of the plans and things will be available there as they're produced. And again, we'll be having more community meetings as we go through the course of the project where we'll have that information available for you. Another question in the Mentimeter: how to balance the trade-off of driving and bicycle usage. This project could sacrifice the driving experience because I can imagine there are definitely still more cars than bicycles on Benton. Volume-wise speaking, I'm sure that is the case. We live in a car-oriented, culture. So the goal here is to make the corridor usable for both modes. So that is part of the analysis we will be looking at in the traffic modeling and the parking modeling, and finding a cross section that that balances those needs in the way that makes the most sense for mobility and safety in particular.
We have a couple more in the Q&A box.
Okay.
I'm gonna read 2 back to back since they are pretty related. So the first one: since Benton Street is a main corridor for fire and police, how are you thinking of handling that? I'm not sure whether speed bumps will work. And then similarly, there are 2 fire departments on Benton Street and the police department at the end of Benton. There are a lot of emergency vehicles on Benton. How will this plan take those into account?
Sure. Well, we'll obviously be talking with the fire department to get their input on this and emergency responders. Let's say that speed humps come to the top as, maybe an option for some traffic calming. There's also the treatment called speed cushions that are similar to speed humps, but I'm sure you've seen these around. It's like a speed hump with a gap in the middle. And the way that those are designed, the gaps on either side of the cushion are spaced so that fire trucks and other emergency vehicles can straddle the cushions without having to slow down as much as they would for, say, a speed hump. Again, there are other treatments that we will be looking at through the course of the project. We keep mentioning speed humps because it's an easy example to point to, but there's a number of other treatments that we will be evaluating as we go through the project course. So.
Okay, the next question we have is, what are the key areas concerns we have already identified?
So we know the high school is a key area. We've heard a lot already from the public and BPAC, and just observationally looking at the corridor and those areas. We also know somebody mentioned the crossings of the expressways. We want to make sure that we can ease those crossings to the extent possible. We also know the trail crossing is another key location that we want to evaluate and look at. And again, we're looking for public input on those locations that you find trouble crossing and would like us to take a deeper dive on. So.
And then the last one I have in here for right now is, do we have any data on pedestrian and bicyclist collisions due to right turns on red?
Yes, we are currently working on the collision analysis, looking at where those hotspots are along the corridor and evaluating where we have locations we want to take a closer look at in terms of interventions and treatments that will, improve safety for everybody. So yes, we are in the process of that as part of our data collection phase that we're in currently. Okay. Well, we have a couple more slides here. Feel free to keep dropping questions into the Q&A, and we can come back to those as we wrap up the presentation. So our next steps, as I've mentioned a few times, we're going to be looking at the corridor traffic analysis this spring. This is looking at intersection delay, the parking study, and occupancy, as I mentioned. And then from there, we'll be moving into preparing some conceptual design options. So whether this includes eliminating parking in some key locations or reconfiguring the traffic lanes to find space for bike lanes. And then from those conceptual designs, we'll be moving into round 2 of community workshops and pop-up events. So a lot of these are going to occur towards the end of the summer and after the school year resumes in the fall. So keep an eye out for those. Upcoming events. Again, we have a repeat of this workshop this Saturday at 11 a.m. if you know other folks who you think might like to attend and learn more about the project. On Thursday, so 2 days from now, it is Bike to Work Day, and there will be a pop-up event located at Santa Moss Creek Trail in Agnew. Some of the folks that are here on this call on the city and Alta side will be at that event. And we also have a community survey if you'd like to provide some more feedback from that. The link for that is available and live now on the project website. So next slide. Oh, and there, Ben just dropped a SurveyMonkey link into the chat with the direct link to that Benton survey. So again, our project schedule, we're just getting underway now. So thank you for getting involved early in the process. This project will carry through into next summer where it goes to council. So keep an eye out on upcoming events. Please feel free to tell your neighbors and friends about the project and opportunities for feedback. And again, thank you for attending. And looks like we've got one more Q&A possibly there, Ben.
Yeah, we do have one, and this is just another shout out to that intersection that's near Benton and Carmichael Park.
Okay.
Another area of concern, so someone else sharing a concern for that location.
Definitely, great. Okay, so I think, perfect, there we go. Again, ways to stay involved. We've got the project URL there. We can just leave this slide up. Again, we have a voicemail phone number that you can call and leave voice messages. If you prefer, that number is 408-381-4240. We also have a project email where you can email the project team with suggestions or ideas or recommendations or whatever it might be. That email address is bentonstudy@altago.com. Again, we have the survey available on the project website. And please join us for our future community meetings and events, including Bike to Work Day Thursday morning. So
We had one more question come in as we wrap things up. So if the city decides to move forward with construction, would that construction impact traffic, and how long would those impacts last?
Well, that's the direction that the project goes is still to be determined. It's going to depend on city council's review and input and their decision. So there's nothing set in stone yet that this would be going to construction. There would also be another process involved between this plan and the recommendations that come out of it and getting to that point. So if council votes to move this forward, there would then be a design phase, which would have another set of rounds of public involvement and community input. Depending on what that design looks like, yes, there could be impacts to traffic, but that is very far in the future right now. And not knowing what the final recommendations will be currently, it's hard to say how impactful those impacts to traffic would be at this stage. We're so early in the process that there's really no way to make any kind of claim about what that might look like. Okay. Well, again, thank you all for attending. We'll stay on for a little while longer in case there's additional questions. But again, please check out the project website and stay in touch and then stay involved with the project. We'd love to get more of your feedback.
Right. Thank you everyone for attending and spending some of your evening with us. Really helped guide our project and our decisions.
Definitely.
Thank you.